All right, I think we're gonna start. So if everybody could take their seats. Somebody should turn on their computer.
Does someone have a?
Does somebody with an audio?
All right, so no, somebody. Shall I try? Yeah, that's better. You're not listening. Okay. All right. Welcome for the third session. This is an ICC YAF session in conjunction with the Washington Arbitration Week. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this event. I was designated ICC YAF representative together with Tom in September this year. So I will give the floor to Jose Antonio, but welcome to Baker Bots. And I yield the floor.
Thank you. Thank you to our sponsor and host today, Baker Bots, Maria Carolina, and thank you also to Jennifer and this team in Baker Bots who has been extremely supportive. I would like to also say thanks to ICC YAF, to Abby, who is here with us and not anywhere else, but here with us. And I'll make this quick, just to say that this panel is a great one, especially because through an ICC course that I've been a participant. I have met many of the panelists here. Karen, I've met before through liking of public international law, and it is my pleasure to introduce now Tom Villalon, who is an associate at Three Crowns and who is our moderator. Tom, as I said, is here in Washington, D.C. at Three Crowns. He has significant experience representing clients in a wide range of international arbitrations under most major institutional rules, with a particular focus on disputes across Asia and Latin America. Tom has represented and advised clients from an array of industries, including construction, mining, and metals, post-M&A, biotech, and pharmaceuticals. He holds a JD cum laude from the University of Hawaii Law School and a BA with honors from Dartmouth College. And he has many accolades, and also he is the host of the China Arbitrator, a Mandarin language arbitration podcast dedicated to understanding Asian views of the practice of international arbitration. He's also the co-founder of Rescue Afghan Women Now, and an organization dedicated, which is an organization dedicated to rescuing high-risk Afghan women from Taliban capture and execution. On Wednesday, we gave the Lifetime Achievement Award to Lucinda Lowe, emphasizing that our international arbitration community in Washington, D.C. is one that goes beyond document review, and it goes beyond the pleadings, and it goes beyond the intricacies of learning how to put a case before a tribunal, either in investor state or in international commercial arbitration. And this is what I was referring to when I emphasized that Lucinda, before being a star, she went to Latin America, lived there, learned Portuguese, etc. So every day within our international arbitration Washingtonian community, we find incredible people that have other types of international experiences. And it's very important for us to know who they are, what they have done, because that provides added value to what we do. and hence, we find marvelous peoples along the way. So with that, Tom, take it away.
Thank you so much. And thanks to Baker Bots for hosting us. It's always a pleasure and a thrill. I'm a little bit envious coming into these beautiful offices with tons of natural light and very strong coffee. Thank you everyone for coming here today. Before we begin, can I just get sort of a show of hands to see what our audience composition is? How many folks here are currently LLM students? Okay, cool. Any current JDs in the room? People currently practicing? Okay, great. People that currently sit as arbitrator. Wonderful. This is a fantastic mix. And so I think we have a perfect panel for this perfect audience. So let me first, I'll go down the line here, making introductions, though I think everyone on this panel needs no introductions. To my immediate left, we have Karen Messier Gore. She's the founder of the law offices of Kieran N. Gore, PLLC, where she serves as counsel and arbitrator in international disputes. She also has two other roles in addition to her roles in private practice. She's a teacher. She teaches law courses, both JD and LLM courses at the George Washington University Law School. And she's also in publication. She serves as the associate editor of the ICC Review Foreign Investment Law Journal, and is also an associate editor of the Kluwer Arbitration blog, which I'm sure is read by most people in this room most days. And then to her left, we have Julia Sullivan. She is the founder of the law office of Julia E. Sullivan, LLC, where she serves as independent arbitrator specializing in energy, infrastructure, and finance disputes. She has also taught law courses, specifically on energy, finance, and international arbitration, both here in the United States, but also in Poland, in Georgia, and in Ukraine. She was previously a partner at Aiken Gump, where she was the chair of energy regulation, markets, and enforcement practice, and was a member of the steering committee for the global energy transactions practice. And then to Julia's left, we have Diana Tutsieva. She is a trilingual international disputes lawyer who is dual qualified both here in the United States as well as in France. She's a partner at Foley Hoeg, where she has been practicing for the last 13 years. And she has particular experience representing clients in proceedings administered by ICSID, UNCITRAL, and the ICC, among many others, in matters involving regulatory actions in the oil and gas industry, mining, financial services, and healthcare, as well as other industries. And then finally, at the very end of the table, we have Diego Pereira. He is the founder of De Almeida Pereira PLLC here in Washington, DC, which was founded in 2017. He practices public international law, international disputes, and investigations. He's also the president of the Portuguese American Bar Association, and he has previously practiced at Paul Hastings, Freshfields, and A&O. So quite a distinguished panel with a wide sort of array of background and experiences. So let me start with a question for you, Kieran. What are some useful experiences or skills to have under your belt before going solo? Are there any personal attributes that make a lawyer suited for solo or independent practice?
Thanks, Tom, for the question, and thank you for having me here. Before maybe I respond to the question directly, I'll start with a disclaimer and say that this conversation that I think we're having here today is quite particularly nuanced for this particular market. Going solo or practicing international arbitration as an independent practitioner or running your own firm is quite different here in the United States than it might be, for example, in the UK, where barristers are common, the chambers model is quite common, or elsewhere in the world where large law firm practice is not common and big firms don't exist in the same way that they do here. So it's an interesting conversation to be having, particularly from this point of view. And I think a lot of us will comment on the US market and the Washington, DC market in particular. And the other thing I wanted to say is I'm just really excited this panel exists, because most of these conversations, when I've been a part of them, have been sort of whispered and secretive, and people are like, hey, how the hell do you get out of big law and do something else? What do I do? What else is there to do? How do I do it? And you don't want anyone else to know that you're thinking about it, or that you're unhappy, or that you're interested in alternative career paths, because that's sort of not socially acceptable, right? Like you should want to practice a very cookie cutter model, because in law school, that is what they sell to us, right? They're like, you go to this great law school, and then you graduate, you have awesome grades, and then you go to this great firm, and then you practice there till you die. and you're very happy about it, right? You're supposed to be very happy about that
You're
career.
very happy to die.
Exactly, right? So it's a specific conversation for this market, and then also what we as American trained or American practicing lawyers are supposed to want out of life. I got to be honest, maybe I need to go back a little further in life and tell you I never really wanted to be a lawyer. I don't think I wanted to work at a big firm. I just wanted to do some really interesting things in life and get some really good experiences and become very good at whatever it is that I do. So I did go to a big firm and I was there for a pretty long time. And then I went to a smaller firm where I learned some other different skills. And then somehow I fell down the rabbit hole that brought me to where I am now. If I were to reflect on that and say, okay, well, what are some good experiences to have had or interests to have had before you decide to embark solo? Well, you probably have to be good at your job, right? Like you need to have marketable skills and expertise, and you probably need to have developed some sort of reputation for those skills that you have. You probably also want to have something that's distinguishable about you, whether it's that you speak languages that are unique or that are not as popular in that market, or whether even if they are popular, you're just really good at them, especially like you're especially fluent or especially capable and skilled. Cultural competence, which can include, having lived in different places, having affinity with different cultures and different experiences, industry expertise. You have to be good at what you do and then be able to sell it, because when you leave a big firm model, nobody's selling you anymore. You are literally supposed to walk around touting your own horn saying, well, I'm really good at this and you should hire me to do this because I'm going to be just as good as anyone else or better or more cost effective or more skilled or more efficient. And you might like me better. It might be more fun to call than the alternative options, right? So knowing that you offer something unique to the market and having the confidence to then present it is like invaluable, right? Like you've got to have the confidence to then do it. Now, my personal trajectory, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about it later in the session, was that I took baby steps. So I knew I wanted to do something different, and then I took baby steps to do so. I left big law, depending on how you define big law. I left big law 10 years ago. And I didn't launch my firm, right, my branded firm, until 3 years ago. So I've been doing lots of other things along the way that maybe contributed to my decision to then be like, okay, well, I'm going to start a firm, and this actually is what I'm going to do, and this is it. This is what I'm going to do until I die, right? And I had to kind of come to that moment where I wanted to decide to do that. So I would recommend just being really good at what you do and knowing what you're good at and what might make you different from the other people in the market or the places you are. Because I liked big law. I was never unhappy there, but I certainly did not fit in. For very many reasons, whether it was my point of view or my background or a variety of other things. It was a nice place to be for a little while, but it was not someplace I'd be happy to be till I die.
So I want to ask a question about, I think a lot of us, when we think about going solo, we think of only sort of the upside, flexibility of schedule, potentially it could be financially quite lucrative. You get to sort of choose the cases you want to, or the clients that you want to represent. But obviously there's a tremendous sort of risk exposure, and there's sort of the scary side of going solo. So to throw the question all the way to the other end of the table to Diego, could you speak a little bit about the hardships and the challenges of transitioning to a solo practice? And in your experience, what were the biggest sort of setbacks and how did you mitigate them?
Yeah, so no, it's a great question. And I have to say, Karen, as you were mentioning, people coming in hushed tones asking how to escape law firm life. If you're escaping to go solo, say it's much harder. You should be running towards something, not running away, because if you think this is an easy path, I'm sorry to inform you, it's not. So I would say the biggest challenge that I would say, and it's in the title of the panel, going solo. You're solo, right? So just think about that a little bit. If you're in a large firm, you have a network that can be across 40 offices, thousands of people who are talented people who work in the industry, who know what you want to do. When you go solo, you're on your own, right? So I think that, and maybe I personally felt this more than others, especially because I started right before the pandemic. So you have you're on your own, there's lockdowns, can be pretty alienating. So that's one of the first things that I'd really, I'd highlight to anyone thinking about it, is that's a pretty big change. Now, how can you mitigate it? Fortunately, there's really good ways to mitigate it. I think for any lawyer, it's important to think about the profession of law as not just, a job, but as a profession, as a vocation, and to be involved in a community in some ways, right? So for me, one of the easy ways was to get involved in ICC YAF. I eventually became the representative for Washington, like Maria Carolina and Tom now. I missed the handover in New York, but to find ways to give back to the community, to be involved in the community, I think is one of the best ways to fight any sense of isolation that you might have as a solo practitioner. I remember early on having conversations with Karen, meeting other people going through the same thing, creating your own sort of your board, your own group of people that you can reach out to, I think is really important. And I'd say these things, I think they're important for all lawyers. I mean, you can be isolated in a big firm too. So I think all of us have a duty to give back to the community in one way or another. But as a solo practitioner, for me, that became much clearer, much faster. So that's one thing. And not only in terms of being involved in the arbitration community in Washington, but there's organizations like the DC Volunteer Lawyers Project. You can help children going through custody disputes. There's so many ways to give back, and I think that really enriches us all, enriches our profession, and is particularly helpful when you're on your own in terms of meeting people in different areas of business and of the practice. It's a really excellent way to combat that. The other thing that I would say is that, Karen, you're mentioning you had more than 10 years of experience plus before you started. Julia, I know you even more. When you start out on your own, you're a beginner. You might have done hundreds of arbitrations, but how many businesses have you started? How many websites have you created? How many, there's a huge logistical undertaking that goes into it. How many, when you're hiring people, you have to get a payroll service. There's a whole system of things. So you go from being quite comfortable, well supported, having IT, all sorts of things in a large firm, to being a beginner, to being on your own. So I would say that's something that you need to embrace, and just get over yourself a little bit and start from the beginning and roll your sleeves up and start trying things and working through the struggles that entails. And I think having the humility of a beginner is actually wonderful for you in many ways, because once you accept that, you're open to learning and you'll grow much faster. So I think that's one easy way to mitigate that is more psychological, just accepting, okay, I might have been doing this for a long time, but when it comes to sales, when it comes to management or design or calculating financial risk, things like that, I'm just starting out, and to give yourself some grace, to have some patience with yourself, because that's difficult. Another thing that I know Antonio mentioned, but I'm happy to share as well, is there's also courses out there. There's Antonio mentioned, so there are 3 of us, I think, on here are part of the ICC Advanced Arbitrator Academy. So it's an arbitration academy that teaches you how to be an arbitrator. And you can go look at something like that and say, oh, I know everything already, like I've been doing this for so long, but sign up for the course, learn, be open to that. I think that's really important for all of us. And that program, I mean, for me, it's almost 2 in 1, because on one hand, I'm learning about steps and even things that maybe I already know, learning them again, hearing another perspective on them, and meeting amazing teachers, meeting amazing classmates, solving the first problem of being on, solo and isolated in some ways at the same time. So I'd say, just off the top of my head, those are 2 challenges that struck me right away. Is you're on your own, and it's time to humble yourself a little bit and accept that you're a beginner. Yeah.
Great. Another option that I think our audience may be interested in is sort of in parallel to going solo, which is becoming appointed as an arbitrator while still having a role in a larger firm. Diana, you've made the transition to being appointed as arbitrator within the context of big law. Can you speak about how you accomplish this transition within the context of a larger firm?
Sure. Can you hear me? So first of all, I'm delighted to be part of this panel with people that I've now gotten to know through the academy, and just to be part of the Washington Arbitration Week. So I'll talk a little bit about, again, I'm not solo, I'm part of a big practice at Foley Hoag, but sort of like, how do you use that platform to develop independent arbitrator work, which is a solo activity within the firm. And I would say for me, the first step, and so some of what I will share with you is a combination of what I've seen my colleagues do, as well as the steps that I've taken, is really intentionality. I think that, at some point you need to be ready for that. And for me, I would say it didn't happen until maybe a couple of years ago, where I felt that I had enough knowledge, expertise, understanding of what arbitrators do to have that confidence to say, well, perhaps now I can take maybe smaller cases, even though in practice I handle high stakes litigations. So I think intentionality is number one. And then I have a list of other things that I think sort of come together. So understanding the role of the arbitrator through practice, some of the things that Karen said and Diego, which is developing expertise and knowing, you know, what it takes, and cultivating your relationships within the network. So one of the things that I did as I sort of made the mental decision that I would like to take on arbitrator appointments is communicate with my mentors, communicate with my colleagues, be open about it. There's nothing, you know, fortunately our firm allows that. I don't know if some firms have rules limiting that. Of course, you have to combine it with your practice. And then reaching out to the institutions. I mean, one of the advantages of having colleagues that, you know, people can refer you, and you know, I've reached out to the different institutions, building your networks through additional knowledge. So joining the ICC Advanced Academy for Arbitrators, which I just completed this week. And just to give you a flavor, you know, kind of when you sign up for it, you think, what else can I learn? I've been doing this for over a decade, but it's a tremendous opportunity to get to know key arbitrators in the field. You know, each session was chaired by 3 people, and then the academy would invite experts who are also practitioners, full-time and independent arbitrators, and you get to know different approaches, different sort of opportunities out there. So I think that's another way to build that network, but also to build your knowledge. And for me, I think you know, once I sort of made that decision to start taking arbitrator appointments, targeting, you know, using your specific skills to sort of target specific regions. Like my arbitration so far have dealt with Russian speaking parties, which is interesting. And I felt comfortable to balance that with my existing workload. So yeah, I think that these are maybe the key things that I've done. And I'm sure I missed something important, but I'll cover it later.
That's perfect. A similar question for you, Julia. So you've made the transition from big law to full-time independent arbitrator. Can you speak about why you chose to practice independently and what advice you might have to offer others who may be contemplating a similar move?
Sure. So thank you for being here. Thank you to the Washington Arbitration Week and to the ICC for inviting me to participate in this panel. I would have a few things to add to what the previous speakers have already said, all of which I agree with completely. If you want to be an independent arbitrator, I would definitely recommend starting out at a big firm if you have that opportunity. Plan to stay there for a while for a couple reasons. You will not have a better opportunity ever to learn an industry, to make connections within an industry, to hone your technical skills, to get the kind of supervision and learning that you'll get at a big firm. If you have the opportunity to become a partner at a big firm, you will also learn at least a little bit about running a business. You might not have to launch a website, but you will have to design or participate in designing the one for your practice group. Most importantly, you will learn something about business development. As a partner at a large law firm, I spent about half my time on business development because I had to generate work not only for myself, but for my group. You have to get comfortable with making cold calls, with making presentations, with moving through large groups, rooms with large groups of people and introducing yourself to strangers. And you have more senior partners to teach you that, to walk you through it. So I think the skills you get at a big firm are so valuable for the rest of your life, whether you stay in the law or do something else. I stayed in big law for 30 years, which is maybe a little longer than others want to do. But think 10 years. The other thing I'd say is on average, arbitrators are 55. These are a young arbitrator is someone in their 40s. So this is a long-term goal. So I would definitely take advantage of being at a big firm. Before you go, ask your firm to give you your conflicts list, meaning who you've represented. Don't take business, don't take client files, do not take client files, do not take anything without getting permission from your firm. But when you're an arbitrator, you're going to have to make disclosures. And if you've been in big law for 10, 20, 30 years, you will not remember who you represented. Seems strange, but you will not remember. You won't remember who opposing counsel was. You won't remember who key witnesses were that you worked with, engineering firms, et cetera. But you will be expected to make those disclosures. So ask for that information before you leave. The other thing I'd say is have a nest egg. That first year or two, when you're trying to get appointments, you will not be making anything remotely like you were making at your law firm. So, make sure you understand that you are building a new business. That requires capital. It requires investment, including of time. So, be realistic financially about, can I afford to let go of my law firm income for the amount of time it's going to take me to build my practice. I could say a couple other things, but I know we're short on time.
Sure, yeah, maybe we can hold those very useful advice and very practical advice. Karen, coming back to you, what are some signs that it might be the right time for someone to go solo? And if you were to go back in time, would you have changed anything about the timing of your launching of your private practice?
Thanks, Tom. I think that Deanna and Julia have suggested some of the signs that are important for learning how to run a business, including learning how to do business development, learning how to manage teams, learning how to manage clients, right? Clients also need management. Once you've had those experiences of, how do you market a practice? How do you build a practice? How do you find business? How do you sell that to others? All of that is the case when you are solo. In fact, on top of all of that, you're also servicing all of the work. So I don't only sit as arbitrator, I do a little bit of work as arbitrator, but I mostly act as counsel. And so for me, that usually involves having co-counsel and having clients and servicing work in very much the same way that I did when I was at other larger firms. The difference is that I kind of do it alone now or with other stopgaps. And those are things that you learn once you've made the transition. But in order to first decide to make the transition, I think everything that you've already heard from the other three panelists is totally spot on, especially the nest egg part, right? Like you take your associate or your partner salary, I think, for granted. And if you look into guidance on, well, how do you pursue entrepreneurship? What is a solopreneur involved? Well, in the services industry, you bootstrap. There is no seed funding or, foundational funding or startup funding available for that business. You bootstrap. You take your own money and you figure out how to live off of it and also how to reinvest it into your business so that you can make further money. So my firm has been in existence for 3 years now. That officially means I'm out of the startup phase. And luckily I didn't lose money a single year over year. So that means I did not fail at starting a startup. So that's great. I made a little bit of money and I'm still here. And then you see how you make more money doing that. So I think those are things to very much keep in mind to prepare yourself for the transition. I think once you've made the transition, I think Diego did a great job of flagging the things that you need to do consistently for your own mental health and your business's health, including having relationships, having sounding boards, those things are things I think I took for granted. You know, when I was at a bigger firm and everybody was in their office or it was a phone call away or a quick, Teams message away, it was really easy to be like, hey, I don't know what to do. What did you do? Or do you have a sample? Have you ever done this before? Is there a template? What's on the document management system? I don't have that anymore. So now it's like, okay, well, who do I know? I mean, I remember I made a frantic phone call to Diego once because I had a client in Germany who needed me to have a German VAT number. And I was like, I don't know what the hell that is. And then I was like, who do I know who would know anything about this? And I was like on Reddit. I was on Reddit and I was like Googling it. And I was like, why do they think I need a German VAT number to do this work? And then I was like, Diego, what do I do? And he's like, well, here's my German accountant's contact info. I was like, cool. And then his German accountant helped me solve my problem, right? So you'd be shocked at the problems that you might encounter, and you can be very creative. And it took me like 6 months to think of Diego. Like after 6 months, I was on Reddit reading about German taxation authorities, right? But then I was like, oh crap, Diego like literally lives up the street from me, and I could have just asked him this question, right? And I didn't. So you've got to be very creative about how you solve your problems as well. And then there are, of course, like the day-to-day elements of it, like you need to like get dressed and go to work and make money. And like, do you have an office? Do you, who do you talk to? Do you have a routine? Like, are you doing this in a sustainable way? Because you also don't want to burn out. And on the arbitrator side, there's that risk of what we were calling during COVID, the 24-hour arbitrator, right? Like that you're just sort of sitting behind your computer like a crazy person, like doing stuff all by yourself in like this little box, right? How do you do that differently for the health of your own well-being? You probably left big law because you wanted to be, taking care of yourself and your family and your social life and your personal life. So how do you ensure that that space remains sacred? And then on top of that, that your business is thriving. So personally, I draw a lot of inspiration from not really how to run a law firm, but how to run an entrepreneurship based business, and how do solopreneurs, regardless of what field they're in, how do they do this? How do they like have systems and routines, and how do they hack their problems? And how do you stopgap the issues that might arise? Because I still service matters that are equally as high value as the ones that I worked on when I was at a bigger firm. I just have fewer of them, which means I can do a better job and I can devote more time to them. But sometimes I need a paralegal. So how do I find a paralegal for that one matter that I need a paralegal for 2 weeks, right? How do I do that? And then you solve that problem. So you figure it out once you get there.
A fun fact for those in the audience who may not know, if you go onto Reddit right now and you ask any question about German tax administrative law, the answer is ask Diogo. So, Diana, coming back to you, many folks in the audience that we saw at the outset are practicing law, presumably in law firms, and they may have ambitions to serve as an arbitrator at some point. What advice would you give to law firm associates who hope to remain at a firm, but hope to seek arbitrator appointment at some point later on in their career?
Sure. So I would say the starting point, and I'm speaking from different perspectives, not just my law firm, is to understand what your goals are and sort of, what are the firm's goals. So when you join a law firm, the only really duty that you have is duty to the partners, to people you work with, to work with them, deliver product and service to client. And there's a billable hour requirement that you absolutely need to prioritize. And then there are, all these additional activities that firms encourage. We all know that, pro bono is really important, speaking engagements, writing. And then how do you then fit that into your maybe long-term ambition to move towards serving as an arbitrator? And I think Julia said something that's really important. It doesn't happen overnight. You absolutely need to build expertise. So being an associate, whether it's in a boutique firm or large practice, is sort of, I would like to be corrected if I'm wrong, but it seems like that's the precondition to being really seriously considered for arbitrator in the United States. Now in Europe, I've noticed people start earlier. I don't know how, even, for example, the Paris market is really interesting. You see people in their 30s getting appointments that are quite, from my perspective, really good appointments. I don't know the specificities, although I'm a Paris bar member. I think my understanding is that in those jurisdictions, attorneys have independence from day one. When I practiced in France for 3 years. My contract with the law firm, it was a large US law firm, was that I absolutely have the right to develop my own clients independent from the firm. And that's a requirement of the Paris bar, which is not the case in the United States. You cannot, as a third-year associate, take on a side job, right? And do this project that is not profitable for the firm. So there is a sort of exclusivity. And I think maybe that helps them to develop that additional space where they can start getting early appointments. When you're an associate, you need to wait. So again, I think going back to actually my initial point, I don't really think I had space to even really consider appointments until I was counsel, because just by virtue of having so much work for clients. But I think once I got to that point and made that decision that I would like to focus on that, and I felt prepared, things that I did is, and I would give that as an advice, is try to differentiate yourself like early on to see. I'm not saying, it's not part of really competition. It's more, how do I stand out compared to some of my colleagues? Could be linguistic skills, could be the fact that you've now built up subject matter jurisdiction working on specific industry. That's valuable. When we as counsel select arbitrators for projects, we do like this forensic analysis, right, of their prior work, of expertise. Are they going to be able to understand specific issues, both legal and industry? So I think building that as well is really important, and being patient about getting to a point where you've differentiated yourself. And I think it happens almost, I know I will speak on behalf of some of my, without naming people, like I have a colleague who just happened to develop a lot of experience in damages. And damages is a very complex area in investment arbitration. And so now, by virtue of having so many cases where she was cross-examining in each case she now has that very niche expertise. If you ask that person, they may not think that it's of value, but it is, it's something that sort of puts them aside. For me, what I focused on is, I have my, linguistic skills that I sort of always try to use as a way to say, okay, if this arbitration involves Russian or English, French, I can probably be of added value. But also, obviously, my counsel work is something that I now think is helpful. So mentoring is so important in any way. I mean, I think we all agree that having these invaluable people in your lives who really, you connect with and who can give you kind of unmitigated advice on, what's realistic at a particular stage in your career, but not let them discourage you. Because sometimes when I look back, things have really changed tremendously, I think. But looking back, I would listen to advice and I would really follow it. But sometimes I wish I had just done something that was really aligned with what I wanted to do in that moment. So don't be afraid to take some risks. So I think that would be my advice.
Excellent. Two final questions, one for Diego and then a final question for Julia. Then we're going to open it up to the floor for questions. So prepare those questions if you have them. Diego, this is an open-ended question. If you could go back in time, what advice would you give yourself about starting your own practice? And is there any element of your transition to solo practice that you would have done differently?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So if you think about what should you have done differently, I think it's interesting because if I would go back, I'd probably tell myself, one, to relax, two, to enjoy it, because and also to make sure I'm comfortable with the nest egg. Because if you start out in the market and you're really hungry and you're really nervous, you'll get taken advantage of. This is not like a friendly you're not in a firm where everyone there's a level of trust. You're out there competing. And I think there's this tendency, okay, I'm spending my hard-earned savings, I got a client, I got to say yes, I got to take it, I got to go. If you do that, you're going to get a really bad deal. So that's just the first point. You have to have the confidence to say no. You have to have the savings to be able to say no, and you have to know what your limits are and have them be firm. I was really lucky when I started. I had a really large client. This is a company that had revenues of $100 billion, had a giant scandal. Revenues dropped to 25 billion. Okay, the GC called me, and I'm like, "What is going on? Like, this is amazing!" Like, you know. And most firms would look at a client like that and be like, "Oh, they're in distress. Maybe they won't pay on time," right? Whereas I'm like, "Oh, let's just go for it," you know. And I think that, like, you know, if you're too eager, you might end up in some arrangements that aren't as good as you thought they were at first, or things like that. So that's one key point that I would sort of like tell myself is that. And I actually had a friend I was talking to once about like business development and like trying to meet people and get to know them. He was like, Diogo, imagine you're a divorce lawyer. You have a great set of friends, a great network, and you're going out and telling them like, hey, can I help you? Can I help you? If they don't need a divorce, they're not going to hire you. Nobody's going to get a divorce just to hire you, right? So like the clients, if they need you, they're going to come to you. You don't have to chase them. If they have problems and they're serious, they'll come to you. They'll pay your retainer immediately because they need their problem solved, and they're coming to you for advice. So you know, you don't need to chase people. You need people to know you. You need to have a network and meet as many people as possible that need and can afford your services. And from there, it just comes to you. So that's sort of like a paradigm shift I would have sort of given to myself back then is you're not chasing anything. They're coming to you because you're the expert. You have to have that level of authority and confidence, and you have to be able to say no to people or tell them, hey, I have a friend who's better for you. Like, you know, you want to not oversell. You want to have a certain degree of confidence, which in some ways I was overconfident at the time, and in other ways I was, you know, needy. So that's I think that's one sort of key lesson I would sort of try to impart. But most importantly, to relax, have fun, enjoy the process. That makes you work better. So
if I can just dovetail off that question. So you're saying that this kind of speaks to the importance of having a marketable skill set and a reputation in the field. If you could go back in time, let's say I could magically give you an extra 3 years of time before you went solo, how would you develop those skills to be marketable for a solo practice?
You know, I mean, I understand the question, but in a way, it sort of goes back to one of my earlier points: is you're a beginner. I mean, you're nothing is going to prepare you for that unless you start a business. I guess what I would say is start a business, start a side business. Start selling something on the side. Then you'll learn about
eBay
sales,
seller.
right?
Then become an arbitrator.
Yeah, but in all seriousness, like that's a skill set that you learn by doing.
Yeah.
And as much experience as you have in a law firm, as much experience as you have sitting as an arbitrator, that's not entrepreneurship.
No.
It's just not. So and that's why I also say, like, have the, you know, relax and have patience and recognize you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. That's part of it. Yeah. So, and that's, you know, the truth is I've learned much more from my mistakes than I have from my successes, and some of them still sting, but I will never forget those lessons. So it's true.
Very good. Julia, you have sat as an arbitrator both within the context of big law as well as in the context of a solo practitioner. Do you have any particular view as to which business structure is better suited to serving as an arbitrator?
I do. I want to add one thing on your prior question.
Sure.
On timing. When are you ready to leave? And I said earlier, before you leave, get your conflict list, have a nest egg. I was going to mention one other thing, which I'll mention now. Have a platform. So don't join every professional organization, especially if you're paying the dues out of your own pocket. But pick one where you can rise to a leadership position. Join, give it a year or two. If you don't see an imminent path to a leadership position, find another. Find a leadership position like Karen did, like Diogo did. You know, they have a platform. So you build your reputation. In your 30s, you're building your skills. In your 40s, you're building your reputation. In your 50s, you're ready to go out on your own. That's my view. In terms of structure, I believe that independence is far preferable as an arbitrator for two reasons. One is conflicts. Not only do I get conflicted out of potential appointments because of my partner's work, but my appointments conflict my partners out of potential. So there's me not being able to get appointed, and there's the new business committee not wanting me to get appointed. So if I'm, especially like an investor state case, you mean, Julia, we're not gonna be able to do anything in Spain? Because you're gonna be an arbitrator, you'll get maybe 200 hours of billable work over 18 months. That's just, it's a non-starter, right? So, so conflicts are a big thing. I would say leverage is the other thing. I mentioned earlier, as a law firm partner, a huge part of your responsibility is creating work for other people. And by the way, most of your income is generated by those other people you are billing out for. As an arbitrator, I have a duty of non-delegation. I cannot delegate my work as arbitrator. So I am not creating work for anybody. So it just doesn't work for the law firm financial model. And you'll be that big partner income, you're not going to get it if you're not generating work for other people. So the financial models are just, they're just quite different. And I think realistically, you're not going to make as much money as an arbitrator as you would in a law firm because you have zero leverage. And that big law firm paycheck comes from leverage. So I would say independence, but it's not without its drawbacks. And you will definitely miss your law firm when you leave. You'll miss your secretary. You'll miss your IT department. You'll miss a billing department. You'll miss having carpet, walls, windows. You're probably in a home office now. So it's it's completely different. But I love the work. I love the work. And at some point you'll say to yourself, have I written as many interconnection agreements as one person should write in a lifetime? And after 30 years, the answer is yes, I must do something. It's time. You'll know when it's time.
As someone who has a 3-week-old newborn, I cannot imagine working from the home office now. It just seems very unpalatable. We have a couple of minutes, about 5 or 10 minutes for audience questions. So we have a very diverse group of audience members. So I encourage anyone that has any questions to ask our esteemed panelists. Let's start here at this corner, this gentleman. Oh, got a microphone coming. Okay.
Yes, thank you so much. I had a question about, I love this Paris model. Now, let's take an example of not having any big firm experience at all. And where do you go? I'm thinking of a place like a WeWork, maybe like a work club or something. If you don't have that big firm experience, is the only option to go to Britain or Paris, this Paris model, to get an experience? But I'm thinking of maybe like a chambers, so not arbitrator, but practitioner, sole practitioner, to get an experience. Do you need to get on a team as a consultant? Is there any opportunity besides big firm experience? You don't have experience in America, or you have to go to Paris or Europe.
Maybe I could start, and then but I do think that the only thing that comes to mind in the United States easily is an academic position. Teaching, and I that's a whole different story how to get there, and Karen might enlighten us. But I think an academic career can lead to arbitrator appointments, especially if you focus on public international law, commercial law, and because a lot of times it's advantageous to appoint an academic, a professor, as an arbitrator who has no conflicts within their practice. So I think that's one path in the United States that one could pursue, but Karen and others might.
I think I understood the question a little differently than Deanna. Did you mean as a like a counsel, like as a practitioner, disputes practitioner? How do you become a disputes practitioner in international arbitration without big law experience? Okay. Well, number one, there's not just big law firms that do it. So there are certainly smaller firms, regional or local firms that do it, especially in markets where, in the US, where various markets that are naturally international, right? Like you have a lot of California work that is cross-border to Asia. You have a lot of New York work that's cross-border to lots of other financial hubs, Miami, Texas. Like there are a lot of natural places in the US, maybe not like Salt Lake City, but like there are plenty of other places where if you were to do regional work, you would have the opportunity to do international disputes. So you could always go to small to medium-sized firms. The other is you could target domestic work in one of those jurisdictions that has a lot of international connections, and you'll be shocked to see that often leads to international work. I didn't start out my career I wanted to do international arbitration. There wasn't an opportunity at my big firm at that particular minute to do international arbitration. So I was just a general commercial litigation associate. So I did doc review, privilege logs, insurance litigation. I did all sorts of stuff that my big firm threw at me until the opportunity to do international arbitration matters actually landed on my desk. So I kind of bided my time. But while I was biding my time, I was literally building the perfect portfolio, because those insurance disputes, well, the applicable law was Brazilian law because it involved this crazy maritime fire off the coast of Brazil, or the other commercial things that I worked on involved French law. So I was doing a lot of New York State commercial litigation where the applicable laws were foreign, where the experts were foreign, where the documents were in foreign languages that I spoke. So even though I was just a domestic litigator, I was a domestic litigator who wanted to do international work. So my partners, my commercial litigation partner was like, ugh, you gotta call France. I don't know how to dial that phone number. You wanna call the French expert? And I was like, yes, I totally wanna call the French law expert. And so that was my opportunity to build that portfolio of experience that then when I got to do arbitration, I could do it. Now, what was sort of weird about it is that it's great. It serves me very well now, because now I'm a solo practitioner and I'm very happy to go to court. I'm very happy to do arbitration. I'm kind of happy to do it all, because when I went to my big firm, it was, the 2008 financial crisis and there was nothing to do. So you did whatever they came up with for you to do. And so you were very naturally versatile, and being versatile is very important when you're running your own firm.
Another fun fact, if you go on Reddit and you ask a question about Brazilian maritime fires, it says, ask Diego or Karen. So, any other questions? I saw some other hands here. Let's have this young woman in the center here.
We've got to get Craig as well. Yeah.
Then we'll get Craig.
Thank you for this panel. Thank you for this panel. I thought it was really interesting. I had a question on something that Julia had mentioned, which was on conflicts. I work as a tribunal secretary to an independent arbitrator, and my understanding is that usually you tend to go independent also largely because of conflicts, especially when you're in big law before. Is there any way that if you want to stay back in big law, that you can try to mitigate conflicts while continue to do both?
No. But Ziana can probably speak to this better, because she has successfully balanced a traditional big law portfolio with some arbitration appointments. One question I would have for people who are interested in arbitration is, do you want to go all in, as in that's all you want to do? Because if so, you might want to think about being independent. But if you love where you are and what you're doing, you just want to do a little bit of neutral work, then, there are firms that will accommodate that.
Sure. Yeah.
So, maybe the benefits of being at a firm are worth, balancing your portfolio in some way. I also think just being an arbitrator is a great credential for someone looking for counsel. You may know some arbitrators because you have served with them, for example. So, there is a value proposition for big law. It's just the conflicts for a matter that won't generate a ton of billable work can be a huge obstacle.
We have time for one last question. I'll give it to the gentleman that I faked out at the beginning.
Thank you all for the remarks. So my question kind of touches upon something you all spoke on, which is startup costs in budgeting. So recognizing that every practice is different, on one hand, a person already has a laptop, Microsoft Word, you can get started right away. But on the other hand, bills will start rolling in for bar dues, for professional organizations, for business development, and things of that nature. So what is some reasonable guidance for kind of calculating startup costs And then secondly, looking at the budget, how would you devote, say, a certain percentage of your budget to prospective business development opportunities versus the hardware, the software, things of that nature?
I mean, I'm happy to start. I think it really depends on you and your lifestyle, to be totally honest. So when I started my firm, I didn't have any kids. I was on my own. I was pretty freewheeling and flexible. Now I have 3 and just have a totally different reality. So I think it really depends on, what your overhead is. And that's going to vary dramatically from person to person and depending on their tastes. I would say the actual startup costs are less than I had imagined. I mean, if you go on the DC Bar website, it will tell you how to get malpractice insurance. You can either work from home nowadays, that's not frowned upon, but even before you could go to WeWork or Regis, I had a Regis for a while. Technology as well. You can spend a fortune on a website. I mean, I have to say, I laugh when I see big law firms rebrand and they spend $20 million on a rebrand. I have a design company in Brazil, in Sao Paulo. The exchange rate is 6 to 1 right now for the real. You can make a website for $1,000 and it's pretty good. So I think that different people, I mean, it's going to depend on your circumstances, really. I don't think there is a one size fit all. It depends on your budget, your overhead, but it can actually cost a lot less than you'd imagine. What I would emphasize is, I think you want to have, I mean, a year's worth of minimum. You need a safety net of some sort, and because as Julia mentioned, your income and your revenues may not be the same. Maybe they will be, but probably not. I mean, many businesses fail, so you need to be prepared for that. And also the other point I was making, that you don't want to be desperate. You want to do this comfortably. And I can say, I mean, going back to one of the earlier questions, when I started, I already had work. So it's not like I just jumped into an abyss. Like there was some leads already that were quite developed. So yeah, in terms of projection, I think there's a healthy, you want to be testing out the market before you jump in. You want to have some sort of a runway, if that makes sense.
I guess I'll say one other thing. The biggest expense will be business development. So you want to be strategic. You want to think about, okay, where do appointments come from? They come from institutions. Your first appointments will probably be from an institution. They come from clients who are appointing party-appointed arbitrators, and they come from other arbitrators. The old days of big law, where I could get a meeting with pretty much any general counsel, or one of my partners could get me a meeting with almost any general counsel, that is gone. It's completely gone. I don't have that. The institutional client that sends me business year after year, that's gone too, because of ethical considerations. If I'm getting appointments from the same party over and over, that's an ethical problem. So business development is very different. But if you're looking for your first appointment, you're probably looking to get it from an institution. If you're in the United States, the AAA is an obvious choice. The ICC is a great choice. Target one, go to their meetings, go to their trainings, right? Don't try to do everything. Don't do scattershot because it's inefficient and it doesn't work. But be really strategic about where that appointment is going to come from and how you're going to get known in that circle.
Great. Well, thank you. Being professionals that are paid by the hour, unsurprisingly, we are perfectly right on time to conclude. I see Abby sort of lurking. I think she's going to give some closing remarks. But on behalf, as the humble moderator, I just want to give a quick round of applause to our fantastic panelists. And also, apologies, I see that there's some folks joining virtually that have some questions that we weren't able to get to, but hopefully maybe we can follow up individually if time permits.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you all for being here today. I'm Abby Hawthorne. I'm the Deputy Director of Arbitration and ADR for North America at the International Chamber of Commerce. Besides having a very long title, I get to work with individuals like this all the time on not only their arbitrator work, but also events like this, which are part of the Young Arbitration and ADR Forum. That's what YAF stands for. And what this is, it's our global organization that does a lot of capacity building. It is targeted at young, which for us is under 40-ish. But the goal is whenever we're running these, that everybody in the room walks away with something, that everybody learns something, no matter where you are in your career, what changes you might be making in the future. So I hope that everybody here today did learn something. And the conversation with us should not stop here. Obviously, these individuals are here in your community and you should be in touch with them. You should talk to the people you're sitting next to and learn from them. But with the ICC side, also get on our email list and come to future events. Consider being a YAF rep, like so many of our individuals here are past or current. It's a great way to be involved. Reach out to us if you have a client who has questions about ICC and you want some more information, you need some resources. We are here. I am just over in New York, but we're in DC a lot and always, of course, available by phone and email. So that's that. Big thank yous to lots of people today. First to Maria Carolina and Baker Botts for hosting us, being wonderful, generous hosts. They brought out the salmon lunch and the desserts. Chef's kiss.
The power of the ICC rep.
The power of the ICC. Thank you to our partners at WA. Maria and Jose Antonio have been wonderful to work with. We're always happy to be part of Washington Arbitration Week, which also the next event starts at 1:30 and it's walking distance from here at Arnold Porter. If you're planning to go to that, it's on business human rights in commercial arbitration. And last but certainly not least, thank you to our speakers for sharing so many personal experiences as well as their expertise. So please give them a final round of applause. Thank you all.